What do you got over there? A Coke Zero
Orange cream.
Orange cream.
The only one.
Little creamsicle. I have my Celsius and I'm still not a paid sponsor, so I'm drinking a no-name energy drink that I'm addicted to. What's up, guys? Welcome to an all-new episode of Unwrapped. This is the newest edition of our show. It is called Unwrapped True Crime Updates because Toni and I are true crime junkies. We can't get enough, whether it's Casey Anthony, Lori Vallow, what else?
Gabby Petito we're talking about today, that new documentary. Gypsy Rose's new documentary.
Gypsy Rose.
New season, I should say, coming out soon.
Yes, we're true crime junkies. Toni's TikTok algorithm says so. It's all she sees and all she talks to me about, and she has gotten me hooked. Shout out to Annie Elise because we love her podcast and it inspires us. Also, they say there was like a thing on TikTok I saw the other day that if you listen to true crime, like to relax or unwind, there's something like mentally wrong.
I'm like a serial killer secretly.
Secretly, we're like psychopaths.
So I know, I believe my ayahuasca experience is coming out before this one. So I'm going to relate to that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that, you know, they say before you go and after you come back, you shouldn't like consume any like negative energy. So I stopped listening to true crime. And when I came home, I was like, you know what? I'm not going back to that. I don't need to consume like anything dark anymore. And that lasted for a solid two weeks.
Mm-hmm.
A solid 2 weeks.
And then here we are.
And I was just like, no, I need it.
I know. It's like a car crash. Like you shouldn't look, but you look. And that's why traffic backs up for an hour.
Yeah.
There's one accident.
But I do, every time I listen to it, I like want to just get on TikTok and be like, why do people think it's okay to kill somebody else?
Yeah.
Like, it's like as much as I'm like addicted to it and I want to hear the stories and I want to understand and, you know, be entertained.
Right.
This is real. And I couldn't ever, who do you think you are giving you the right to take somebody else's life? No matter how bad they are. Granted, there's some situations where I do also feel it's warranted, but most of the time, most of the time I just feel, I mean, the stories we're hearing about most of the time are not self-defense. It's like plotted murder for money or, you know, whatever. Like Annie Elise always says, like, just get a divorce. Like,
just get a divorce.
Yeah.
That is because so many of it is wrapped up in love and relationships. And
yeah. And it's just like, who do you think you are?
Crimes of passion, I think they call it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's messed up.
No.
So let's start with
which one?
Really a legendary story. It happened back in 2008. I'm sure all of you know about it, but we're going to recap it and talk about the newest updates of the Casey Anthony trial. So just to preface this, I watched this entire trial. It's a really long story that I'll tell on another episode of the podcast, but I was living in a hotel temporarily for 2 weeks simultaneously during this trial. So I religiously ordered room service and binge watched the entire trial.
Mm-hmm.
And I was obsessed with it. It's heartbreaking. It's devastating. It's disgusting. I hate that nobody was brought to prosecution for this crime. But essentially, Casey Anthony, a young woman, had a daughter, 4 years old, I think.
2.
Her daughter was murdered. They never prosecuted anyone for it. And the whole thing is no one reported this little girl missing for 31 days after she was killed.
Yeah.
They showed Casey Anthony out in the club, hanging out with her boyfriend at the time, living a seemingly normal life while her daughter was deceased.
Yep.
The father comes into play. He seemed to have known something about it, if not had something to do with it.
Definitely.
And that's all sketchy too. And then they each came out with a documentary. Casey's parents came out with one from their perspective. Casey came out with one from her perspective. And really, neither of them gave us any answers.
Yeah. Well, because if you don't know, you know, she's like the woman version of O.J. Simpson. Like, we all watched her trial play out, like, right there as it was happening, and everyone knew she was guilty. I mean,
yeah, guilty of something.
Guilty of something. Yeah, even if she didn't actually do it, but guilty enough to be, you know, you're not allowed to be a free person anymore after whatever happened. And she was found not guilty. So we're bringing this up. If you guys haven't seen on TikTok, my algorithm knows that this is what I wanted to see this week. Last Saturday, Casey Anthony comes out from the disgusting rock she's been buried under for all these years to make her first TikTok on a brand new TikTok page. And it's saying how now she's a legal advocate and she wants to be a voice of people and, you know, help people and advocate, especially for the LGBTQ community. And I'm like, lady, we don't want you. Nobody wants you. The only people that want you are people that murdered someone and they need help figuring out how to get away with it.
Yeah. Period. Receipts, bank statements, as Kevin likes to say. I don't understand this. So let's break down her video. In her video, she goes on to say that she is now a legal advocate and that she's been doing legal work now for some time, but now she's going to be a public advocate for people to help them keep their private lives private and teach them how is that relative?
It's not. So I think essentially what she was saying in that post was she wants to be a legal advocate. She knows she has a big platform, so she needs to come out and do something with it, essentially.
For her and her daughter, she says.
For her and her daughter. She needs to advocate for herself and for her daughter.
What are you advocating?
Like, just tell the truth of what happened. You can't move forward until you admit to the public of what happened, because you know what happened.
It's the craziest redemption story. Like, there's scenarios in life where people make mistakes and they can come back from it with a bigger, stronger motivation in life, reason, purpose. Like, I don't know, maybe what are some things you can come back from?
I don't think murdering your 2-year-old
murdering your child is not it. So nobody wants to hear this from you. No one is going to hire you. This is ludicrous.
Well, and then she goes into the second part of her story, of her TikTok, which is what you were saying, like they don't even coincide, is one, you want to be a legal advocate, but then she goes down a ramp of talking about how people's lives need to be kept private and it's very important. And she wants everyone to understand that even if no one's looking at you and you're not like in the public eye, you need to still be private. And she wants to help people understand that.
Which is...
No, only you need to be private, because so many people want to literally murder you. You need to be private.
And it's so just counterintuitive. And you're doing that via social media, the least private place on the planet. Like,
right.
And she's like, and you'll see me in my car to protect
my privacy
of my house. But like, girl, you'd be more private if I saw a white wall in your house rather than like the seats of your car. Now I know what brand of car you drive.
And the way she comes on, like, so, like, sure of herself, it really gives me the ick so bad.
Yeah, and there's only one victim in the story of Casey Anthony, and that is Kaylee Anthony. But there's definitely more than one perpetrator. Because the dad's not innocent.
No.
Casey's not innocent. I think the mom may have been the most innocent out of the family. And the mom and dad are still married. So
which is insane.
By association, she's also not innocent. If you really dig into the story, and a lot of you I know probably already know the story, but like the dad was former law enforcement. He cries about what happened that day, but won't ever say what happened that day.
That's
it was something with the pool.
Nobody won't say.
It's so crazy to me. And then he goes and tries to kill himself during the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which can be argued. Was he mourning over the loss of his granddaughter and that's why he tried to kill himself, or guilty conscience, obviously. So I don't know. That's all up for debate. But nonetheless, I will not be using Casey Anthony for my legal advocacy work.
No. All right. And we even gave her too much attention here, I feel like. So let's move on.
Let's move on. Lori Vallow.
Yeah, we're talking about Lori Vallow. If you guys don't know, she was arrested 2 years ago now and sentenced, I believe, to life in jail. Her and her husband, Chad Daybell, they were former LDS church members, where they took it 10,000 steps too far, which we definitely feel like is a common theme in the LDS church. I don't know what they're pouring in wine glasses over there, but
it's so weird too. I don't know. It's like if you listen to true crime, there's a lot of stories related to the LDS church. And I'm sure there's a lot of incredible people in that church and in that community. But why are there real extremists in that?
Right. And I don't know. I think that it's because they live in the middle of nowhere somewhat, and like they have too much time on their hand. They're like out of touch with reality, I think, because they're all like in like Idaho.
But I grew up in the middle of nowhere and the too much time on my hand.
No, but it's different. Like they're like really out there in like the potato fields. I don't know. It's like some like sign stuff,
Maybe.
I don't know. But
I think it's more
if you don't know who they are, essentially they have been found guilty of murdering Lori's daughter and son, adopted son, and burying them in her husband Chad's backyard. She definitely also murdered her husband. Come on, we all know. And she also murdered her brother.
Well, tell us the full story. They were both married to other people.
Yeah, they met. Chad believes that he is like a god of sorts and, a ruler and, whatever in his right mind he thinks he is.
But they both killed their spouses, no?
To be together. Yeah, they did.
But they weren't found guilty of that.
No, they were not. They were never even charged, I don't believe, officially with that. And also Lori's brother died by gunshot, literally shot in her home, claiming to be a self-defense, but then she put her kid in the car and drove him to school, went and got like McDonald's or something, and then came back home, then called the police. Never charged with that. And the reason we are bringing her up, if you don't know their deep dive story, definitely go listen. It's fascinating. There's actually Monster Mother or something like that on Netflix is the whole documentary about this situation.
Give you the breakdown.
Forgot about that. We're bringing her up because I started seeing clips of her on TikTok this week of her doing an interview. So obviously I had to deep dive into what all of that was about because we haven't seen or heard anything from her since her trial ended. And Dateline is coming out with an interview where they interview her in jail, and it comes out, we're recording this on Thursday, so it's actually coming out tomorrow, March 7th.
Okay.
So I just saw some clips, but I had to bring it up because the clips I saw are insanity. So first off, her demeanor. Her demeanor the whole time. So in the clips I'm seeing, it's, I guess, somebody off camera, like a producer or the interviewer, I'm not sure, is named Keith. And the whole time she keeps referring to him as Keith. And she'll be like, well, I've got all day to answer any of the questions. So you can just, request more time with me. I've got nothing else to do, Keith. Oh, you can keep asking me questions like that if you want to, Keith.
Oh,
then she goes in
the report.
Oh, yeah. Like so bizarre. And it was like 10 clips. I'm not remembering every single one of them, but it was like a lot in a row where she would end it with Keith, like nasty. And then she goes into a rant about how she knows she's going to be exonerated, her and Chad, because Jesus showed her images of the future. And in the future, her and Chad are not in jail.
Well, wait, let me ask you a question. So they were found guilty.
But never admitted it.
Never admitted
anything.
But there was enough evidence to obviously find them guilty and put them behind bars. They're both in jail for life?
Yeah.
Wow.
But they both very strongly believe that they are going to get out. They're going to appeal and they're going to get out because they know the truth. And
I don't understand how you could, well, obviously kill your child, but they also killed their spouses, their previous spouses, and never got charged for it.
And her brother.
Mm-hmm. So this is some sort of like, they have some next level God complex. Like you said, Chad really has like this God complex where they think they're either doing the work of God and somehow have that so twisted and misconstrued to believe they're doing good.
Well, they believe that Chad believes he's a light seeker and he can literally just look at you and give you a number. And based off that number, it's essentially if you're like a good person or a bad person. So they looked at these kids and they were bad. They were bad
other
numbers.
Kids?
Yeah, so Lori has a son who's much older and he wasn't even living in the house anymore.
And then did he have other kids?
Kylie was older too. She was like 13, 14, 15, something like that.
The child they killed.
Yeah. And Chad also has kids and his kids are older. And he had been with his wife for a long, long time.
It was like a plot to get rid of their spouses so they could be together.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't consider
divorce. And they just didn't want the kids. Right, just get a divorce.
Get a divorce.
Like Annie Elise always says, just get a divorce. It's so ridiculous. But their whole thing was, I don't even know if they like killed their partners to be together or if it was because they thought they were bad. Because actually, Lori was divorced or getting divorced. They were not living together. They were living hours and hours away from each other, and she still killed him. And he seems to be a good guy, actually. But from all accounts, everyone says that Lori used to be good. And like she got really involved with church, met Chad, and that's when everything started.
Chad took him down the dark path.
Yeah.
And she couldn't see the light anymore.
Yeah. And she still doesn't believe she did anything wrong. She wouldn't admit to killing the kids, but it has, I believe, been admitted that they were like dark.
Yeah.
And so like they had to go, but she didn't kill them.
Talking about dark, let's talk about one of the most captivating cases of the last decade. There's been multiple documentaries and TV series on Gypsy Rose. If you guys don't know the story, it is a terrible, disgusting, messed up tale of a mother
with
Munchausen syndrome.
Yeah.
Who essentially unlawfully medicated her daughter for diseases and illnesses she did not have, letting the world believe that her daughter was handicapped in more ways than one.
Feeding tube, had her salivatory glands removed,
had teeth
over
removed,
100 surgeries.
Over 100 surgeries.
Lied about her age to make her younger.
What I find most disturbing, you can understand one sick, disgusting, twisted woman's mind and how she could do this to her daughter. But what I cannot understand is all of the doctors and medical professionals that were somehow convinced this girl had diseases she didn't have.
You know what? That's not something anyone talks about.
Nobody talks about that enough. Like, all right, she got her teeth extracted because of malnourishment and they were rotted and dead. So like, that's one that I could be like, okay, she was malnourished. They were rotting and dying because of all the things the mother.
Well, she also drank a bottle up until she was 24, the night she killed her mom.
Drank a bottle out of a bottle.
So that's why she had those buck teeth. Yeah.
Disgusting. I could honestly tear up talking about it.
I listen to so much of this kind of stuff, especially around Gypsy Rose. You know what? That is insane that they are not going after all these doctors. How do you put a feeding tube in a child saying that they need a feeding tube without any
proof?
But did you know that Gypsy Rose was also addicted to painkillers and Xanax? And her mom got her addicted. Well, she started taking painkillers after surgeries
that her mom would give her.
And then she literally got addicted, and her mom would like finagle ways to get more Xanax and painkillers, and she would mix them and call it a cocktail and give it to her. But Gypsy Rose was so upset in her life and so unhappy that she willingly was doing it because it was the only thing that made her feel.
She was also operating at the age of like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
They said like mentally and physically she never aged because she was being Munchausened and treated like a child. I mean, the mom was pushing her around in a wheelchair, convincing her that she couldn't walk when Gypsy could walk.
And she would wait till her mom would
her mom would leave to get out of the wheelchair. She was like, wait, I can walk. And so Gypsy was realizing these things, but she was so Stockholm syndrome into, and I don't know if that's the right term, but she was so just convinced into believing all these lies that her mom was telling her. And like, I hate the outcome of the story and I hate the whole thing because inevitably Gypsy Rose ends up plotting and murdering her mother with her boyfriend at the time. And she goes to jail. How long was she in jail?
8 years.
8 years?
Yeah.
This is one of those scenarios where I'm like, it's never okay to kill somebody, but like, think about the life she was living. How was she ever going to escape? I wish her and the boyfriend would have just ran away.
She tried 3 times.
She tried. I wish they would have been successful in getting her out of that house without the murder, obviously.
Well, so did you know that CPS actually came? CPS was called to them.
And did what?
And she says today that the questions they were asking her were just the wrong questions.
Really?
She gave the very specific example that they asked her, like, do you have bruises on you right now? And she's like, in that moment, I did not. So I said no. But if they would have asked me, like, worded things different or, like, asked me things different, they would have gotten the answer that to get me out of that situation. But that's why they didn't.
This mother was, like, just the insanity that this mom is taking her to these doctors, and they show some footage, or they reenacted it in the series, because there's also, like, a scripted series.
Called The Act. Yeah. On Hulu.
And in that series, they kind of reenact the moments through the lens of Gypsy. And it's like she's going to these doctor's appointments, and her, like, when the doctor leaves the room, the mom is coercing and telling Gypsy what to say when the doctor comes back in. So the doctor comes back in and she's like, Gypsy, how are you feeling? And she's like, oh, I can't eat. I need a feeding tube, or whatever it was, to convince these doctors. And it's so sick and twisted. And it's like, to get donations and they were getting all kinds of financial assistance.
Their house,
their house through that show, right?
I don't know if it was through a show, but it was through some kind of like organization where they built them a show, but they built them a house. Yeah.
Disgusting.
No,
what's the latest on Gypsy Rose?
So the reason we're bringing it up, I forgot about this, is because they're coming out with a season 2 of Life After Lockup. So we all know she just had a baby. So this series, it was started filming before she actually had the baby, but it goes through, now she's getting divorced from the guy that she married while she was, right out of jail, going back with her ex-fiance, who is somebody she met while she was in jail as a pen pal, I believe.
Yeah.
Now they're having the baby together. So the new season is about to come out. So I'm very excited to watch it. And,
I can't wait. Season 1 we watched it together. It was fascinating.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you really like relate with her, and you really see like this girl has been put through hell, and not for the lack of her own issues now that she has from all of this, but like she's seemingly like wants to live a normal life, but she's dealing with all of this trauma and this PTSD from the scenario that she was raised in. Like, how do you live a normal life after going through something like that?
So it's very interesting. I was just thinking about this yesterday because I was actually listening to her on a podcast episode, and I was listening to her interview, and it's from fairly recent. And as I'm listening to it, I'm just like thinking, I'm like, wow, she was so sheltered and like no other kid exposure. She never went to school. She wasn't socializing. The only person in her life was her mom. That was it. Like nobody else. She didn't see anybody else for like long stretches of time, mostly just like doctors and stuff was all she would see.
Right.
So now you go from that and then you go right into jail for 8 years.
Where like you're almost sheltered and recluse, but at the same time exposed to so much.
Well, like she wasn't eating food before she went there. She was still drinking out of a bottle when she went there. So you go from one insane life experience and all you know to another one to now being released into the free world. Everyone was like coming at her, I feel like in the beginning for like the way she acts and like whatever. And it's like, how do you expect anything else? I feel like it was like me after I like got divorced. Like you go like crazy because it's just so
when you're in a traumatic situation like that and you're so isolated and sheltered, like people were hating on her for like wanting clout and making bold statements on social media. But it's like, what do you expect? Like, look at what she's been through.
Yeah. And then now I feel like now it's been like a year, I think almost since she's been out. And I feel like you see it in her TikToks and on her social media. She like mellowed out and really like found like, what's that famous TikTok that everyone was like raising her sound? We were saying it yesterday.
Oh my God, I forget.
I can like picture her voice saying it, but I can't remember.
I know, I can't
whatever.
remember.
I feel like she like really mellowed out. Now she'll, now it's just like, all right, so I have this going on today. Let's get ready and we're going to go. And like, she like just even like talks more normal. I don't know. I find her so intriguing and I think that I like her a lot.
Yeah, well, because you really can just empathize and feel for her. I will say this out of straight opinion. She is so much more normal than I would expect someone to be coming from her circumstance.
That was why I started this whole thing. You have someone that was so isolated and didn't see people. She expresses herself very well.
Yeah.
She can hold conversations with confidence with people she doesn't know very, very well. And I watch her on like interviews and stuff, and she can sit there and speak her story very well, I think.
Very articulate.
And I'm just like, interesting.
I know.
Because they say that homeschool, now I'm jumping ship here, but they say like, oh, you don't want to homeschool your kids. They're going to be the weird, unsocial kids. Maybe they don't actually have
correlation. What do you think it is? More genetic? You're born how you are, how you, we see it with our kids too. Like two kids that were raised seemingly very similar, but they're completely different kids.
Right.
Like socially, athletically, like studiously, like they're so different, but they were raised in, the same way. So that is interesting. Maybe it is. I mean, it's like nature versus nurture. Is that the conversation? So it's like, how much of it
like
was
maybe if your kid was never even socialized at all around other kids, it doesn't mean anything.
Interesting.
But maybe it depends on the person. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's go into the Gabby Petito story because there's a new, what's coming out?
It came out last Monday, the new Gabby Petito documentary on Netflix.
You watched it?
Yes, I did.
I have not yet.
I feel like Gabby Petito is a very sensitive topic for me, especially, I never realized this so much until after I actually rewatched this new documentary, because there have been many documentaries. I mean, I've heard her story every which way it's been told. And watching it, I actually made a TikTok about this yesterday because I felt so passionate about it. Yeah. Listen, you don't know what you don't know. People don't want to show you the bad. They only want to show you the good. When you can catch a glimpse of, at first I want to start with the rumors.
Recap the story.
Okay.
For those of us that I don't know Gabby Petito's story.
Okay. So Gabby Petito is from Long Island, like me. And so is Brian. Brian's parents had moved to Florida. She moved them there. When they were down there, they decided to buy a van, go do van life for a while. She was very creative and wanted to make content and started a YouTube channel where they were going to travel in the van. She was going to make YouTube videos, and that's what was going to be their life. While away on the road, he killed her and left her in the woods and came home in the van, showed up to his parents' house. Gabby's mom and stepdad were very worried about her. They couldn't get in touch with her.
What did he say? Oh, she's missing?
They started calling Brian and they got blocked. They started calling Brian's parents. Have you heard from the kids? They're not answering the phone because Brian wasn't answering the phone. Have you heard from them? Are they okay? I'm so worried. They blocked them.
The parents did?
Yes. The cops went to Brian's house because then that night, Gabby's parents reported her missing.
Right.
The cops went to the dirty laundry's house to see, have you heard from your son? The dad opens the door. The van is right there in the driveway, registered to Gabby's name. Answers the door. Sir, have you heard from your son? We got a report that these kids are missing. He goes, my son's home, but we already called our lawyer. So if you have any more questions, you can call the lawyer.
Oh, sus. Now, is he in jail? He was found guilty?
So, no. So, wait, you really don't remember?
I don't know the story.
So they haven't found Gabby. She's missing for, I think, like...
When did this happen?
28 days. August of, 2023, I think.
A couple years ago.
Mm-hmm. She's missing for like a month. They're out there searching for her everywhere. They don't even know where to look, like nothing. In that month time, the laundries, the parents, the sister, Brian, go away on a little fun family camping trip.
What?
Come back next weekend. Brian goes to the woods to go hiking, tells his mom going to go hiking for a couple days, brings a tent, never comes back. The police call... The car was left at the national park entrance. They call the mom, like, hey, your car's been parked here for days. She goes to the park, gets her car, drives it back home. Meanwhile, knowing your son took the car to go camping.
Where's the son?
Then she decides a couple days later to report him missing. The FBI, cops, everybody, search teams are looking everywhere in this national forest for Brian. Simultaneously find Gabby dead.
In that forest?
No, back in Utah, I think, at a different national forest where they had been last
with the camper.
With the van. Can't find him anywhere. But apparently at this time, there were a lot of floods because it was like raining a lot. So a lot of the park was flooded. Finally, like 2 weeks later or something, Brian's parents decided they were going to go join the search team for the very first time. They walked for an hour and they found Brian's backpack and Brian's dead body, except for it wasn't actually a dead body. It was so decomposed. The only thing that they had were his teeth. And the gun wasn't there. But apparently he had killed himself, shot himself. But no one from the FBI or anybody found him for the whole 2 weeks that they were looking. But his parents got there for 1 hour and walked up the trail and found him right there with his stuff. Apparently they did know it was him. His teeth were identified by their dentist. Match confirmed, which was shady. And that's why a lot of people now are saying that they think Brian is still alive. Like, the only remains are his teeth. And we had them checked and confirmed that they were Brian's by their own family dentist, where it could have been a lie saying.
Is that how it works, though? Like, the cops don't go
No, because
further?
then he is dead, guys, because then they did confirm later on with further DNA that it was Brian. So unless he ripped out all of his own teeth and left them there, I don't know. But
so when that
the gun was never found.
So when that happens and the criminal of a crime is then dead, do they even look further into the Gabby thing?
Well, so they pieced together what happened, and Brian did leave a suicide note. And in the suicide note, he writes that, essentially, to make a long story short, he went hiking, he left Gabby at the van. When he was walking back towards the van, it was getting dark, so he was rushing because he wanted to get back before it was too dark. He heard screaming from Gabby, so he ran and he found her choking and drowning in water or something, fell, hit her head, was in water, was drowning kind of. So he pulled her out and he brings her back to the van and he's trying to get her to wake up because he thinks maybe she's got a concussion. So every time she falls asleep, he would wake her up. And then she was like, please just kill me so I don't feel like this anymore. I can't breathe. So then he mercy strangled her.
Does the public believe this?
No, everybody knows that that's not what happened because the coroner office, after they examined Gabby's body, said she died from manual strangulation and blunt force trauma to the head. And the blunt force trauma is not something that could have been inflicted from a fall.
Interesting.
So he just lied.
But what's the backstory on them that leads you to believe? Is there backstory? Was he abusive? Was he?
Yeah. So actually, there is body cam footage from I think 2 weeks before he killed her. And this is what got me so worked up and emotional over this body cam footage. And it's been showed so many times. But it's essentially somebody sees him at a gas station and they see him hitting her. So they call the cops. And the cops come and he was driving a little erratically on the road because they had already driven off from the gas station, but they were new to look out for the van. and saw them driving erratically. So use that as a reason to pull them over. When you pull them over, they separate them. They bring Gabby back to the cop car. They leave him up front and they interview them both separately on what's going on. She is a hysterical mess. And she just keeps saying it's her fault. It's her fault. She has OCD. So she was angry at him for bringing dirt in the camper. And then he locked her out of the camper so she could cool down because she was too upset and all these things. And she's hysterical.
Let's just start with that.
Yeah.
You don't lock your significant other out of a camper in the middle of nowhere because she's upset and can't get it together. Okay, let's just start there. Secondly, I want to point out she's distressed and blaming herself. Also a red flag that there's probably something worse going on.
And the biggest red flag, I think, is she is so emotionally distraught and can't get her thoughts together and is speaking all over the place and all these things. And Brian is over there laughing with the cops. And it shows this on the body cam footage, saying like, I know, she's just like crazy. Like, we're good. And then she starts saying how she was hitting him first. So now they're looking at her as the abuser, but like, they know that that's not the situation, but like, that's what she's saying, so that's what we have to go off of.
And what's he saying?
Oh, no, it's not a big deal. You know, we were just fighting. She was just had to cool down a little bit. That's all it was.
So he was cool, calm, collective guy. When really they're
joking around with the cops, like, yeah, she's, crazy, like women are. And the cops like, yeah, I know. I got a wife at home. I know. Like, what the fuck? It's so disgusting. And then they take him to a hotel because he didn't have money for a hotel. So they took him to a hotel for him to spend a little time away from her because she was the aggressor. And it was in like abuse hotel. Like if you're getting abused, then you need somewhere to go stay and you can go stay for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a hotel.
Okay.
And they drove him there and dropped him off. And
what about her?
She was left to spend the night alone in the van in the middle of nowhere.
And did anybody ever tell the cops that he was abusive that night?
No.
So how do we know?
Well, he admitted to hitting her or pushing her back or something, but he said she did it first. She was hitting him and he was just trying to like, get off me, get off me.
Yeah.
And she went with that story. But it said that it really seemed like in that moment that he had already, when they realized they were getting pulled over, he was telling her, this is what you're going to say. This is what you're going to say.
It's so hard because we know from people we know and our own personal experiences that when you're in an abusive, toxic relationship like that, where the man is abusive, he's the abuser, there's so much more to it a lot of the time. There's a lot of coercion, there's a lot of brainwashing, and a lot of abuse victims believe they're the problem because that is what's been put in their head for so long.
But it's also like so I can speak about this because like I said in my TikTok, I've been in like, I feel like the same situation and multiple times. And it's like, I can remember every single time I'm the one that's so upset. Like I can't even get my story straight because it's like so many things are coming to my brain at the same time. And I'm so overwhelmed. And what's really happening? What did he tell me that's a lie? And what is the truth? Like, am I making this up? Like, because they're looking at you like the issue. And he's literally sitting there like,
cool, calm.
She's fucking crazy. I told you she's crazy. Like none of that happened. It didn't happen like that.
So convincingly.
And I had a woman, I'm going to put it out there, but I had a woman judge when I was fighting for a final restraining order. And it was a woman. And she was literally looking at me like, you are being too irrational right now. And you're too emotional. We need to just talk about this. Meanwhile, I'm listening to him go over and over all of these insane lies. And obviously, I know to my core that this is so not true and this is so wrong.
Right.
You can't help but get emotional. And my point to all of this is when you have the woman looking like that and the man looking like that, no matter what's being said, that should be the sign right there that she's right. Even though she doesn't seem like she's in her right state of mind and she can't articulate what she means right now.
Right.
That is like the number one sign.
It's so disgusting.
Yeah.
It's really an issue with our system. And it's so hard for me to even fathom and believe that you can, in some cases, see abuse, see the video proof, see the bruises, see the battering, but because of one person's cool, calm, collective demeanor,
they win.
And it's
so scary. because you know what happens after they win? It gets worse. Like Gabby Petito.
It gets worse.
Which, like, I understand. Like, I don't want to blame the cops. Like, what are you supposed to do? She's saying she wants to stay with him. He's saying he wants to stay with her. They can't arrest somebody based on, like, so it's like, I understand, but.
Well, that's a different situation than other situations that we're referring to, too. It's like, yeah, I mean, innocent until proven guilty.
But it's also like, okay, so a guy abuses his wife or girlfriend in this situation. There's no prosecuting them. Like, what happens? You call them and you're like, he's attacking me or she's attacking me. I don't want to.
Either way.
They come. If they have enough proof, which is another thing, they want video proof. So unless you have video cameras in your house, they're not going to do anything, or physical bruises on your body in that moment. They're not going to do anything. But then they take him or her away. They're coming back home tomorrow.
They're going to make bail, or maybe they don't even have bail. You just can. Yeah, you're coming back home.
Yeah.
I want to dive deeper into this on another episode because I do want to talk about people that are in these situations, and, you know, maybe we'll give more advice in the future and more context as to what they can do to get help. But just know you're not alone out there. And these are some horrific stories that we're talking about. But I also think it's important to bring light to it and to talk about the wrongdoings on many different levels. We hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of Unwrapped True Crime Updates with Daria
and Toni. And if you didn't watch Gabby Petito, that came out on Netflix last week, go watch it.
I'm going to watch it.
Don't forget the Lori Vallow Dateline interview Friday night. I don't know when this is coming out. It may have come out. But March 7th it's getting released. I can't wait to watch it. We're definitely going to do an update on it next week.
100%, because I want to see what she has to say and break it all down.
Yep. And Gypsy Rose coming out season 2. I'm excited.
We'll be watching. Hopefully you will be too.
Yep.
And we'll see you next time on Unwrapped.